An Argentine federal criminal court has sentenced former President Carlos Menem and his Minister of Economy, Domingo Cavallo, to jail for embezzlement. The case involves the sale of a public plot of land in Buenos Aires back in the 1990s. The government authorized the Argentine Rural Society to purchase it for $30 million, when its real value was about $138 million. Menem, who is currently a senator, received a sentence of 3 years and 9 months. Cavallo got 3 years and 6 months. In 2015, a federal court found Menem and Cavallo guilty of embezzlement regarding a scheme to make overpayments to intelligence officers and keeping a share. Work to get the power fully restored in Venezuela continues following Monday's attack on the Guri transmission plant. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez tweeted that the transformer was, quote, destroyed by the hands of criminal rights that follows instructions from Pompeo, Bolton, and Marco Rubio. Russia has dismissed the U.S. demand to withdraw military personnel from Venezuela. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump issued a warning while addressing reporters at the Oval Office. He said all options are open to force Russia to leave. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova says Russia's presence in Venezuela is fully legitimate. Zakharova says before worrying about Venezuela, Trump should first honor his pledge to withdraw forces from Syria. In Colombia, indigenous, campesino, and Afro-descendant organizations have stressed the importance of their fight in defense of land rights. At a press conference, leaders of ONIC, the main indigenous organization, said they will continue demanding that the current government respects their right to land ownership. They also said they won't remain silent and that their protests will continue. A debate was held on Monday in Colombia's Congress over the political control of the peace agreements and how their implementation can move forward. Many feel that the government of Iván Duque is deliberately ignoring these discussions in the hopes of putting an end to the agreements.
During a debate over the implementation of the peace agreements, Senator Iván Cepeda announced that he will formally accuse the President and the Attorney General for not complying with the peace agreements.
I have interjected in front of the Investigative Commission and the lower house. It may be symbolic, but I have accused the President and the AG of violating the Constitution.
The debate went on without the presence of officials who must carry out the implementation of the peace agreements, like Miguel Ceballos, Commissioner of Peace, and Emilio Artilla, Commissioner of Post-Conflict Issues, among others.
We have complained to the public prosecutor about the actions of Mr. Emilio José Archila and other ministers who failed to come to this meeting with absolutely no excuse.
Many feel that peace has not been given the importance it deserves during the 7 months of the Iván Duque's government. He has not even met with the Congress Commission for Peace.
We have even asked foreign diplomats to please ask the President to speak with us. But the President has not even considered giving us a meeting. He has not even answered our letters. His attitude is increasingly discouraging.
For their part, the defense minister once again used the strategy of blaming the previous government for the slow progress of the implementation of the peace agreements.
President Duque does not want to put an end to the peace agreements. He wants to implement them. But the problem is that there's no resources for doing so.
The few officials of the government who took part in the debate could not say with clarity what their policies for achieving peace is.
A 17-year-old Palestinian working as a volunteer medic was shot dead by Israeli troops in the occupied West Bank. This happened in a refugee camp near Bethlehem. The Palestinian Health Ministry identified the victim as Sajid Musher. He was reportedly wearing a reflective vest. The Israeli military had no immediate comment on his death, but the Palestinian Health Minister called it a war crime. The violence came as Israeli forces entered the camp to conduct arrests.
While he was doing his humanitarian duty, while treating one of the injured, the Israeli criminal occupation shot him with live bullets.
The World Health Organization strongly condemned the attack, adding that the protection of health workers, patients, and health facilities must be respected at all times. And Omar Shakir from Human Rights Watch told AFP that if confirmed, the teen's death would be, quote, at least the fourth clearly identifiable Palestinian medic gunned down by Israeli forces in the last year. He urged the International Criminal Court to launch a formal investigation into crimes committed in Palestine. Delegations from different countries are arriving in Nicaragua for the 8th summit of the Association of Caribbean States. This comes as the ACS celebrates its 25th anniversary. Representatives from Suriname and Martinique have already arrived. The conference is set to begin on Thursday and end on Friday with the motto, Uniting Efforts in the Caribbean to Face the Consequences of Climate Change. The 25 member states, 9 associate members, and 6 organizations will all attend. Eastern Island has started to feel the impact of climate change affecting mainly its wetlands. The fluctuating temperatures caused a record drought, putting the freshwater reserves at risk and drying the wetlands. More intense swells are also causing soil erosion. Meanwhile, the Salas and Gomez Island, the most scarcely inhabited island in the world, has been seen covered in plastic garbage. Local communities said they are hoping to create environmental policies to address the problem and promote sustainable tourism.
Records show that since 2010 there has been a drop in rainfall. The worst was in 2017 when, if I'm not mistaken, there was just 670 millimeters, which is the lowest ever recorded in the history of the island. With this quantity of rain, it dried the entire wetland.
Climate change is affecting us directly here in Rapa Nui. As I said, this is because of many things, with drought, rubbish, pollution along the coast, the collapse of our temples. This is affecting us directly. So even if we take care of things here, try to conserve, it will affect us like it will the rest of the world.
Austrian authorities have searched the home of a far-right nationalist group leader in connection to the New Zealand mosque attacks. Martin Sellner, head of the Identitarian Movement of Austria, confirmed that investigators searched his apartment and seized several electronic devices. Sellner allegedly received €1,500 in 2018 from a donor with the same name as the man behind the Christchurch terrorist attack, which left 50 dead. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali examines the mass media influence promoted by imperialism. Get access to the analysis.
Welcome back. Various campesino and indigenous peoples in Paraguay have started a demonstration demanding their right for their ancestral land. Our correspondent in Asunción, Osvaldo Sayas, has more.
Today, the National Intersectional Coordinator started a mobilization with a series of claims. One of them, the total subsidy that has been granted for the production in the field. They emphasize that there is a crisis that has been going on for several years. In addition, indigenous people from the Taorai community joined the mobilization and have been camping in Asunción for over the past 6 months. They are demanding restitution for their lands that have been taken away by the Brazilian businessmen in Corpus Christi, located on the border with Brazil. These organizations tried to march this morning, but the government police forces stopped them from protesting. The government met with representatives and institutions to discuss the policies. The protest is indefinite, and they will keep demanding their rights.
Brazil's indigenous Guarani people from the Jarawa lands have stormed the Sao Paulo City Hall to protest against the suspension of indigenous health services. They attempted to move past security guards who formed a human barricade to prevent them from going further into the building. This comes as the Bolsonaro government cut back resources for health care, giving the responsibility to municipalities. He also forced the removal of Cuban doctors from the Mais Médicos program. Our correspondent Ignacio Lemus has more.
We are
at the Sao Paulo City Hall. Right now, indigenous Guarani are occupying the entrance to City Hall. Some have also entered in an attempt to hold a meeting with Mayor Bruno Covas. What they're here to denounce is that they have made cuts and have closed the Indigenous Health Secretariat in Brazil. There are demonstrations in 5 other Brazilian states as well, and roads blocked being held by indigenous groups in Brazil, all due to the closing of the health centers by the government of Jair Bolsonaro. We also denounced the expulsion of the Cuban doctors from the Mais Médicos program. After this decision, the indigenous were left without doctors. Now, they are left without medicine and nurses. Here, the Guarani indigenous people have camped outside the City Hall awaiting a meeting with the mayor.
We thank Ignacio Lemus for that report. The Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has suffered a significant defeat in Congress over control of the budget. Members of the lower house voted by over 2/3 in favor of a constitutional amendment that would reduce the share of the federal budget that the president can control. At present, the president has discretion of over about 10% of the budget. The rest goes on the so-called obligatory spending, including salaries and pensions. If passed by the Senate, the amendment would give the executive discretion over just 3%. And also in Brazil, the prosecutor's office has rejected Bolsonaro's order to commemorate the military coup of 1964. The institution said in a statement that the idea of celebrating the start of a military dictatorship is extremely serious and disrespect for our democracy. President Jair Bolsonaro ordered the armed forces to properly commemorate the coup that led to a dictatorship which lasted more than 20 years. The parents of the 43 missing students from Ayotzinapa in Mexico continue to demand justice. 5 years after the forced disappearance, a truth commission created by the current government is expected to resolve the case soon.
People in Mexico haven't forgotten that security agents kidnapped 43 students in Ayotzinapa in the state of Guerrero between the nights of September 26th and 27th in 2014. Relatives of the missing students are hopeful that the work of the Truth Commission investigating the case will help them know what really happened to their loved ones. This commission was established through a presidential decree in December 2018.
We recognize that the government did some work by creating this Truth Commission, but we still need to know where our children are. When the government will provide us with some concrete answers, then only they will have our full trust.
In the coming days, the federal government is expected to choose who will lead a special prosecutor in office responsible for the investigation.
We are expecting the new investigators to be named soon and hope that they will follow the guidelines that we have demanded, especially to investigate the military personnel and the federal police who were involved. We also want that investigators examine the phone calls made related to the disappearance and the cell phones which were seized following the kidnapping.
On March 21st, the Deputy Secretary for Human Rights of the country said that there are some new testimonies that could help to resolve the case. According to official numbers, at least 40,000 people are still missing in Mexico.
A Chilean court has ordered the country's Roman Catholic Church to pay compensation to victims in a sex abuse cases against former priest Fernando Caradima. The Catholic Church must pay about $150,000 each two of Caradima's 3 victims. Caradima was never charged by civilian authorities due to the statute of limitations on sexual crimes under Chilean law. On Saturday, Pope Francis accepted the resignation of the Archbishop of Santiago, who was accused of carrying up the abuse. Two men are well on their way to recovery after they were buried alive while installing pipes for the Antigua Public Utilities Authority. Part of Pickett's Road in Burma fell on Kaiser Abbott and Joel Edwards last Thursday. The men were preparing to install a 6-inch pipe underground when asphalt collapsed and covered them both. They were rescued and treated at hospital. Guatemala's electoral court is appealing a decision by the Supreme Court that allows the daughter of the former dictator Efraín Ríos Montt to run for the presidency. Our correspondent Mario Rosales from Guatemala City has more.
Guatemala's constitutional court will have the final say on whether Suri Ríos Sosa can be a presidential candidate or not for the next general election in June 16th. Suri Ríos is the daughter of General Efraín Ríos Montt, who passed away last year. He gained power through a coup d'etat in 1982. However, Guatemala's constitution bans relatives of leaders who came to power through an armed revolt from running for the presidency. So the Constitutional Court is the final authority that will decide if this law applies to Suri Ríos as well, who is currently one of the most popular candidates for the presidency. Suri has found support among Guatemalan conservatives and the far right, mainly for arguing that the army be put back on the streets and that the death penalty be reinstated.
We thank Mario for that report. In Guatemala, several communities have met in the northern municipality of Rasuja to discuss the threats palm oil plantations pose to their territories. We have more on the environmental battle in this report.
These social leaders came from various communities to unite against the palm oil industry in northern Guatemala, which continues to harm people's lives and the environment.
Communities have less land for cultivation as companies buy up more and more. We lose our forests for these plantations, and even the community area is at risk because these monocultures are expanding at an accelerated level.
And water scarcity and contamination is another problem stemming from these plantations. It gravely affects life in the communities, especially children.
They poison our waters. Our children suffer from diarrhea, itching, and fever. And why? Because of the oil palms they are planting around our community.
Locals have filed judicial complaints about the environmental damages, especially regarding the contamination of the river La Pasión, but locals say their complaints have been ignored.
The river La Pasión is the most important river in our municipality, and now fish die by the thousands due to the pollution. Various universities ran water quality analysis and found that the palm oil plantations are polluting the river, yet justice never sides with the poor.
In the face of this devastating situation, some community leaders decided to take action to stop the expansion of palm oil plantations.
We didn't let a company plant African oil palm in our village, even though the company bought 3 plots in our village. We didn't let them start their war.
Over the last decade, the abundance of lush forests and fresh water have attracted the ever-expanding palm oil industry. Today, Guatemala produces 7 tons of palm oil per hectare, giving it the highest productivity in the world. But these plantations occupy an area equivalent to land used by more than 60,000 subsistence farmers.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. The former Vice President of Comoros is calling for peace after the results of last Sunday's elections. Ahmed Said Hafar said pleading with the opposition, which is disputing the results, not to resort to violence but focus on developing the country. He says violence will only worsen the issues the country faces. Jafar served as Vice President from 2016 to 2018. He fled last year after opposing the government on constitutional changes.
Today, Comorians are going through very tough times. There have been demonstrations for almost a month. Not everyone accepts the results of this election, but today it's not missed as Ali's re-election that matters to me. It's the Comorians, peace in Comoros, stability in Comoros.
The Kenyan teacher who won the World's Best Teacher Award was greeted with unbelievable scenes of jubilation at the Nairobi airport. Peter Tabichi won the $1 million prize and returned home to a hero's welcome by his students. Tabichi is a mathematics and physics teacher at a secondary school in a remote village in Kenya's Rift Valley. He says he will invest his $1 million prize money in projects for the community.
In the first place, I did not expect it, and therefore it was really a great moment, not just for me, but for Kenya, for Africa, and all teachers, my students who struggle every single day with so many challenges. They don't have facilities, and yet they are able to really do very great things.
Residents of Beira, Mozambique are still living in deplorable conditions despite efforts to restore livelihoods after Cyclone Idai. Thousands of citizens are living in squalor since their lives have been turned upside down by the devastating cyclone. Workers with the World Food Program are racing to get emergency supplies to families that desperately need it. Apart from lack of shelter and food, cholera cases have been confirmed in the area, and aid workers are battling to contain the threatening outbreak.
These people's lives have been devastated. They have no livelihoods now. They've lost their homes, they've lost their farms, they've lost their crops, they've lost loved ones, and they're going to need help at least for the next 6 months to 12 months to get their feet back on the ground. Schools are lost. Children are just devastated. Families have been wiped out with everything that they had.
British MPs have voted down 8 alternative Brexit options. Lawmakers are working to find an alternative to Prime Minister Theresa May's twice rejected EU divorce deal. But on Wednesday, they defeated options ranging from leaving abruptly with no deal to cancelling Brexit or holding a new referendum. MPs plan to hold more votes on Monday. Britain has till April 12th to find a new plan or leave the EU without a deal. All this comes after British Prime Minister Theresa May said she would quit if her EU Brexit deal passes at the 3rd attempt. May made the announcement during a meeting with Conservative lawmakers. It's seen as a last-ditch effort to persuade opponents in her Conservative Party to back her. Britain has until April 12th to find a new plan or crash out of the EU without a deal. Meanwhile, opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn is criticizing the dysfunction inside May's government.
This country is on hold while the government is in complete paralysis. The vital issues facing our country, from the devastation of public services to homelessness to knife crime, have been neglected.
Boeing has unveiled upgrades to the 737 MAX airplane. This comes on the heels of 2 recent plane crashes in which nearly 350 people died. The upgrade includes changes to the plane's maneuvering characteristics augmentation system. Airlines will not be charged to install this upgrade. Boeing had previously charged extra for some safety features. A museum in Austria has cancelled a lecture featuring Ronnie Kasrils, a renowned South African anti-apartheid activist of Jewish descent. His talk, scheduled for this week at the Volkskunde Museum, was to address historical South African anti-apartheid struggles parallel to struggles experienced by Palestinians today. It was intended as part of a series of events associated with the annual Israel Apartheid Week. Kasrils served as Deputy Minister of Defense in the Nelson Mandela government. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.